I was on a quest in my teenage years for truth, lifestyle, how to improve the quality of your life, and in a very broad-minded way. I grew up Catholic, and very soon I realized there was a lot of dogmas in these faith-based religious practices. I wanted something that I could experience. I didn't want to just wait for God when I die. When I was a teenager, I was into very, very loud music and very, very fast music. And it was sort of underground, not corporate music in America. We gathered in places in New York City, and we put out records. We started our own record labels, and the band got bigger and bigger and bigger. And as my band got more big, I became a little bit more distressed, confused with material life. And I think anybody in their workplace can sort of relate to that. Sometimes when you get success, the opposite happens to you emotionally. You feel a little empty, you feel a little shallow sometimes. And then my father died unexpectedly, and he was sort of a rock or a foundation in my life. When I was 22, when my father actually died, I quit my band and I went to India to search for God. And I ended up living in ashrams in India and America for about 6.5 years as a monk. And it was like the most refreshing, probably the most refreshing time of my life, because I learned how to live with very, very little, but be very, very satisfied with not so much. And that was a great thing. In a culture of consumption that we live in, to have so little and to be so joyful, it was such an incredible formula. Hey, my name's Ray Cappo, also known as Raghunath Das, and I was on a quest in my teenage years for truth, lifestyle, how to improve the quality of your life. And yeah, from a young age, I just wanted to healthy living, positive thinking, and spirituality in a very broad-minded way. I grew up Catholic, and very soon I realized there was a lot of dogmas in these faith-based religious practices. I wanted something that I could experience. I didn't want to just wait for God when I die. I wanted some God in my life on a regular basis. So I was turning more towards Eastern thought, because it had a more loving conception of divinity as opposed to a fear-based conception of divinity. When I was a teenager, I was into very, very loud music and very, very fast music. And it was sort of underground, not corporate music in America. We gathered in places in New York City, and we put out records. We started our own record labels, and the band got bigger and bigger and bigger. And as my band got more big, I became a little bit more distressed, confused with material life. And I think anybody in their workplace can sort of relate to that. Sometimes when you get success, the opposite happens to you emotionally. You feel a little empty, you feel a little shallow sometimes. And then my father died unexpectedly, and he was sort of a rock or a foundation in my life. And when that happened, it sort of made me lose faith in the stability of the material world, and it accelerated my spiritual search. And sort of at the height of our band's success, I started really studying deeper and deeper spiritual philosophies, and I wanted to stop going out in the world and telling them, you know, okay, you should live a clean life and a drug-free life and a vegetarian life. I did all those things, but at the same time, I felt like I needed something more. And I started to fall in love with the Bhagavad Gita, which is timeless wisdom for all people of all races, of all nations. And that's how I got into it. And I thought, yeah, I don't want like a sectarian truth. I want truth. I think truth is for all people. It doesn't matter if there's Jewish truth or Hindu truth or Christian truth. Truth is truth. And it's like mathematics. 2 + 2 is 4. No one has a monopoly on that. No one has a monopoly on truth. And I love the way the ancient teachings of India explain this, that there's one God. God has many, many names, appears in many different cultures, sends many different prophets. And to me, that was sort of a wider gate that I could, yes, this makes sense to me. And I think that's why so many Westerners are attracted to it, especially if they had like a bitter or distasteful experience in their own traditions. When I was 22, when my father actually died, I quit my band and I went to India to search for God. And I ended up living in ashrams in India and America for about 6.5 years as a monk. And it was like the most refreshing, probably the most refreshing time of my life, because I learned how to live with very, very little, but be very, very satisfied with not so much. And that was a great thing. In a culture of consumption that we live in, to have so little and to be so joyful, it was such an incredible formula. So that was sort of my practice. How do I cut away the baggage of life, and how do I imbibe just like essential spiritual teachings and meditational practice? And that's what sort of changed me and opened my heart. After traveling through India and having so many sort of deep, this was 1988, so this was before internet, before satellite television, before cell phones. So India then was a whole different world. For an American to go to India, everything was foreign, everything was peculiar. When the first time I came to India, there was one type of car. The Ambassador was the only car that anybody drove, and a couple of Tatas on the road, you know. And when I first got to Vrindavan, there was one phone in the entire village. And all day long, the electricity would go off and then go back on again. So it was really I feel like I got to experience before it got so built up, before there was a Yamuna Expressway or a beltway around Delhi. So those experiences were very special, and they touched my heart because, again, it's sort of like when you don't have anything to lean into for material comforts, you had to go deeper into the essence of the teachings. And for me at 22, to be a celibate monk became like a challenge to, do I really believe this stuff? And I had to really imbibe it and really drink it up in a deep way to keep my head on straight, especially when I went back to the West. And after a few years of being in the ashram and just doing simple menial tasks like a monk, cleaning up or sweeping up, or at one point I just lived on a farm and I took care of cows, I started to realize, actually, I was a successful musician. Why am I giving that up? Where Arjuna wanted to give up his career as a warrior. And Krishna said, no, sir, you must fight. That is what you're born to do. And I love this idea within the Bhagavad Gita, is that we have a duty in this world. It's part of our, I call it our small I identity. There's a capital I identity, a big I identity, which means I'm a spiritual being and I'm lost in this material world. But there's a small I identity. It's like what I'm good at in this world, or maybe you're a father or a mother or some occupation. So I thought, you know, I was a spokesperson for a movement of teenagers who were getting off drugs and getting off smoking, getting off alcohol, and stop eating meat. And I thought, I gave that up for spiritual life. Now, how can I incorporate it into my spiritual practice? And what I noticed was that spirituality as it's taught through the Vedic teachings, is not just like I'm giving this up. It's I'm working on controlling my mind, controlling criticism, envy, competition, arrogance. These are like the subtle things that we have to work on to have a peaceful life, to have a connected life where we see every living being as brothers and sisters. We see spirit in everybody, no matter what tribe they're from, or no matter what culture they're from, or no matter what religion they're from, or no matter what political party they're from. We have something in common, and it's got to go to a much deeper level, and that's the spiritual level. And that is what's taught again and again in the Gita. And this I really embraced, and I thought, I shouldn't be giving up music. I should just be doing music in a very focused way, in a spiritual way. And that's when I got another few monks, and under the guidance of older monks, I started doing a band again. Now this band wasn't a kirtan bhajan band, although we did that also. We started to get trained in classical Indian music. But what we did was we did loud, noisy punk music with very specific spiritual message. And that spiritual message is the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the message of Vedic culture. And I think with that audience that I already had developed, the message is so potent that it just penetrates the heart. The vehicle was different. Of course, the vehicle, nowadays the vehicle is in the old days you would sit with a pundit and he would read through the book and you would listen, you'd hear from the guru. But in modern culture, they listen through loud music. And that was our medium, and that's what we were good at anyway. So I studied the Gita and I would write these essential teachings in the music, and it had a massive international effect. People became monks and inspired to become spiritualists all over South America, all over Malaysia, all over Indonesia, all over Europe, all over America. And the success of it was, not even fame. The success was people's hearts were changing. And it just encouraged us to go deeper and deeper in this. So that was one phase of my life as a punk turned monk. So that was years ago. That was in my 20s. And as the band started winding up, as I started getting older, I started thinking, well, what am I going to do? What phase of my life now? And I always did yoga. And America has this strong interest in yoga culture. I think that yoga has been, it's so big in the Western world right now. And I felt like but a lot of times they don't know any philosophy. They treat it almost like stretching. But there's so much interesting information in the teachings of yoga. And so I started teaching yoga. And at this point in my life, I've been doing yoga for 20 years or 30 years. I started when I was 17, when yoga was very obscure and only taught by a few gurus. So I started in the 80s. And so at this point in my life, I did yoga every day anyway. So I thought, I'm just going to start teaching yoga. And with yoga, I would do some chanting, and I would do a yoga class and teach about health and Ayurveda and diet. And so that became my life, and I traveled internationally doing that. And as it started becoming more and more popular, a lot of the students wanted to know more about philosophy and the sacred literature. So me and a friend of mine, we started a podcast, and that's called Wisdom of the Sages. And not that we are the sages, but it's the wisdom of the sages and rishis of ancient India. And we started a daily study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it was good for my students. You get a few hundred students on. But immediately when we started it, an old friend of mine, who's become the most world famous podcaster, Joe Rogan, asked me to be on his podcast. And then our numbers went through the roof. And now we meet people who study with us every day. It's a podcast that we do every day. And it's got a huge community internationally. And matter of fact, I'm here in India right now, and we're doing a retreat for all of the fans, they're fans of the podcast, which really means they're the fans of Vedic culture and the fans of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they're the fans of Lord Krishna. And they come from all over the world, and we tell stories about, Krishna Bhakti, Krishna Lila, and also the philosophy behind it. And more importantly, how do you take the ancient teachings and make them relevant and practical in your life, especially outside of India, in the Western world? And that's sort of what we've been practicing for me now since 1988. My book comes out April 1st. It's a memoir of my life. It's called From Punk to Monk. And it is my crazy story and my coming into my spiritual life. And I think whenever you find a spiritual memoir, my hope is that the reader finds their spiritual journey in that. And it talks about me meeting Raghunath Swami, who is the visionary behind where we are right now, the Govardhan eco-village, and how when you meet a person who's spiritually connected, they change the trajectory of your life. All you need is a minute or a moment with these people, and it changes your heart. So I will say that check out the book, and you can get it on an audiobook, or you can get it on also on a book format. You can go to Amazon and find it. You can follow me on Instagram, Raghunath Yogi, RAGHUNATHYOGI. Follow me there. Anytime I do some training, I travel internationally, and I come to India because I love it here. I'm coming here since 1988. Hey, for more great content like this, make sure you subscribe to Wake Up and Shine.